Equals. The winter of 1939 came brutally early. Snow fell thick on the Karelian Isthmus, muffling the sounds of distant artillery. Captain Lauri Niemi stood on a ridge overlooking the frozen forests, his breath turning to white mist. News from Helsinki had arrived. Soviet troops had crossed the border. The war Finland had dreaded was real. Around him, men in white camouflage dug hastily into the permafrost, constructing bunkers and laying mines. "We'll hold here," Niemi muttered, tapping his map, where it read Mannerheim Line. Named after their commander-in-chief, it was not a wall of concrete, but one of courage, trenches, and determination. Overhead, the sky darkened with the shadow of events that would shape nations. For the young men beside him, the line was more than defense. It was their homeland made flesh, frozen into the earth. Somewhere in the distance, the low rumble of engines echoed like a warning from the east.
By early December, temperatures plunged to 30 below zero. Steel cracked, rifles jammed, breath froze inside gas masks. Soviet divisions advanced, an avalanche of men and armor under crimson banners. Captain Niemi's unit of engineers watched them through periscopes, silent and grim. Their camouflage blended perfectly with the snow, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant thunder. At 6 a.m., artillery shattered the frozen quiet. Earth trembled as the first bombardment began. Shells screamed overhead, exploding with blinding light. "Hold your fire," Niemi ordered, crouched in the bunker. "Let them come closer." Hours later, as Soviet tanks rolled forward into minefields, the Finnish guns opened fire. The night glowed with sparks and smoke. The world turned to chaos and glory. The Mannerheim Line had awakened.
The bombardment raged for days, a storm of fire and iron. Trees shattered like glass, snow turned to ash. Sergeant Vino, Niemi's radio operator, kept the line alive by sheer will, his fingers bleeding from cold. "They think we'll break," Niemi said between detonations. "They don't know Finns." When Soviet infantry charged through the smoke, the defenders met them with disciplined fire, every shot deliberate. Molotov cocktails blazed against tank armor, setting iron beasts aflame. The smell of burning fuel mixed with pine and cordite. As dusk fell, the snow reflected the red of the horizon, a man-made aurora of destruction. For every meter gained, the Red Army paid with dozens of lives. The line held, barely. At night, the men listened to the wind and wondered how long courage could substitute for reinforcements that never came.
Night descended in silence. The battlefield, once deafened by fire, was now eerily still. Captain Niemi walked among the ruins of the forward bunkers. He found a letter, half burned, addressed to Mother. He folded it carefully and tucked it in his coat. The moaning wind carried faint echoes, wounded men calling for help from no man's land. "We can't go out tonight," said Vano softly. "They're watching." Niemi stared into the dark. Duty waged a quiet war against mercy. Somewhere beyond the tree line, searchlights swept the landscape like cold eyes. The line had become haunted ground, where the living bore the weight of both victory and loss. Each man knew, tomorrow it would all begin again.
Reinforcements arrived in trucks crusted with frost, young men hardly older than boys. Niemi gathered them at dawn, pointing toward the shattered landscape. "You're not just defending bunkers, you're defending Finland." The men nodded, eyes steady. Engineers worked tirelessly, repairing trenches and frozen gun emplacements with bare, blistered hands. Dynamite charges were placed beneath weak spots in the ice. At night, they huddled around small fires, murmuring songs of home. "We are ghosts," Vino muttered, "but ghosts who fight." Above them, the northern lights shimmered, nature's silent salute to those who refused to surrender. Amid the cold, Niemi felt a strange warmth, not of the fire, but of purpose. No empire, however vast, could crush the spirit of those who built strength from snow and silence.
January 1940 brought a new Soviet offensive, the largest yet. Thousands of troops surged across the ice, supported by roaring tanks and heavy bombers. Snowstorms cloaked their advance, turning the horizon into a blur of threat. Niemi's sector was hit first. He stood atop the bunker roof, binoculars trembling in the cold. "They come again," he said quietly. Shells rained down, shaking the ground as though the earth itself rebelled. The sky burned orange. Finnish gunners returned fire, each explosion echoing across the white plains. Despite exhaustion, the defenders fought with machine-like precision, their small numbers moving swiftly, invisibly. For every collapse, another man took the position. Blood mixed with snow, red tide meeting white resistance. The Mannerheim Line bent under pressure, but it did not yet break.
February brought unbearable fatigue. Supplies dwindled, ammunition ran low. Frostbite claimed more men than bullets. Niemi felt the weight of every loss. The Soviet artillery never ceased, day after day, hour after hour. When the bunker beside his was destroyed by a direct hit, he ran through the smoke to pull survivors from the rubble. "We can't hold forever," Vaino shouted. "Then we hold today," Niemi answered. That night, orders came. Strategic withdrawal from several sectors. For the first time, the Mannerheim Line yielded. Niemi looked back at the trenches his men had built, now half buried in snow and blood, and felt a sharp pain deeper than fear. The land itself seemed to mourn. Behind them, explosions marked the end of an era.
The withdrawal across the isthmus was chaos frozen in time. Trucks overloaded with wounded crawled along icy roads, while Soviet shells rained behind them. Villages once filled with laughter now burned, orange reflections flickering across Niemi's weary eyes. He ordered rearguards to rig bridges with explosives. Explosions echoed through the pine valleys as they fell back toward WWII. "We may lose ground," he told his men, "but not our honor." Amid the inferno, a strange calm settled over the captain. The line might fall, but its defenders had proven something eternal, that courage could resist annihilation. As they vanished into the snowy night, Niemi whispered to himself, "If we must yield the land, we will never yield the soul of Finland."
By March 1940, the final defense lines near Viipuri stood like skeletons of a dying winter. The Soviet advance seemed unstoppable. Yet Niemi and his remaining men fought with a quiet ferocity. Each rifle shot, each grenade throw was an act of defiance. Snow melted beneath the heat of new bombardments. Inside a shattered farmhouse turned command post, Niemi listened to radio silence. Then, faintly, news of impending negotiations. "We might just live to see peace," Vaino murmured. Niemi nodded, though his eyes carried the weight of every fallen friend. As the guns thundered one last time, Finland's resistance had already written its name into history. Small, stubborn, and unbroken.
The ceasefire came on March 13, 1940. The guns fell silent, leaving only the whisper of wind over empty trenches. Niemi stood atop the remnants of the Mannerheim Line, staring eastward. The Soviet banners now fluttered where his men once stood, but Finland still lived, scarred, yet sovereign. Around him, soldiers packed in silence, too tired for celebration. "Was it worth it?" Vaino asked. Niemi looked toward the horizon, where dawn touched the snow with faint gold. "Yes," he said, "because the world will remember that we stood when standing seemed impossible. The line had fallen, but its spirit endured, in every frozen trench, in every name carved into the Karelian ice. The war had ended, but the story of courage had only begun."